You wake to the smell of two things: burnt rye and something very dead. Possibly it's the rat under your bed. Possibly it's your cousin Rupert. He was coughing yesterday. Then he was praying. Then he was twitching. Now he's quiet, but not in a peaceful way. Your room smells like the love child of a bakery and a battlefield. Before we really get into it, take a moment, just a short one, to like this story and subscribe to our small corner of medieval misery. Only if you enjoy what I do, of course. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a wonder to see night owls and anxious sleepers from across the world curling up under the soft rustle of death, taxes, and pestilence. Dim the light, maybe turn on a fan for that soft ambient buzz, and let's descend together into this lovely bit of rot. Now, back to the rat. It twitches, still alive. You name it Gregory, after the bishop, who said the plague was a punishment for long skirts and sarcasm. Gregory looks like he disagrees. Gregory is also chewing your sock. Outside, the bells are already ringing, not the happy Sunday morning kind. These bells clang like they're trying to wake the dead, or politely remind them not to get up. A town crier is shouting that the market has been moved to a less infected square. No one knows what that means. You suspect the square is the same, just with a different name. St. Eustace's Circle of Temporary Health. You are, technically, a baker's apprentice. Technically, because the baker died 3 days ago, and you now spend most of your time trying not to touch flour bags that twitch. You bake by memory, by panic, and by smell. The last batch rose like a saint, and then collapsed like a lung. The people still bought it. This city, not named for plausible deniability, has streets shaped like intestines, corners that leak, and public toilets that double as gossip centers. Disease travels faster than news, but slower than rumor. Your job, unofficially, is now surviving long enough to remember how people used to laugh. Across the street, old Mirtha is setting fire to a pile of leeches. You nod in agreement, though it was her idea to cure her husband's plague with 20 good suckers. Now she burns them like witches. The smell is memorable. You step outside in your best tunic, meaning it only has 3 holes. The sky is gray. Everything is gray. Even the pigeons look depressed. You try not to breathe through your nose. Gregory scurries behind you. He is now your emotional support rat. And that's how your morning begins. By noon, 3 things have happened. 1. The baker's old cat has started speaking Latin. 2. The mayor has banned any and all gatherings of more than 4 suspiciously coughing people. 3. A man outside the chapel has spontaneously caught fire. You are not convinced any of these things are medically possible. But it's the Middle Ages, and the line between divine intervention and bad digestion is famously thin. The bells are ringing again. Always with the bells. Every church in the city is tolling a different note, as if competing to see whose god is most annoyed. You try to count them. By the time you reach 17, a new bell starts tolling behind you. It's a mobile bell. A man with boils the size of hen's eggs is dragging it on a rope, announcing, "Bring out your nearly dead." His voice has the joyless tone of a man who's seen far too many actual dead and is now willing to settle for maybes. You duck into an alley, not because you're sick, but because the word nearly has become dangerously flexible, and because your cousin Rupert's body is still in your room. You're hoping the rat handles the worst of that before the monks show up. On the main street, the tanners have hung a sign reading, "Cured hides, not cured bodies." A helpful distinction. Less helpful is the note beneath it. Open sores discouraged, but not banned. It's good to know the city still values commerce over caution. You follow the scent of vinegar and desperation to the town square. Once, it held markets. Now, it holds people who used to go to markets. Ragged tents, prayer circles, and one man playing a flute made from someone else's femur. He's very proud of it. Says it belonged to a tax collector. A priest in a white robe, formerly white, now mostly brownish, is preaching at a chicken. The chicken seems unimpressed. You listen long enough to learn that the plague is a punishment for meat on Fridays, women wearing red, and anyone who has ever said the word almond with impure thoughts. You quietly vow never to speak of almonds again. A child sells charms made from dried frogs. Guaranteed to protect you from evil, he says, but not from taxes. You buy one. He winks and throws in a pebble, blessed by someone who definitely met a saint once. The frog charm smells like moss and failure. You pin it to your collar anyway. A boy screams that the apothecary has shut his doors. You approach and knock, gently. A voice inside yells, "If you're not bleeding saffron or speaking in tongues, go away." You consider lying. You're good at it. But the last person who tried to fake symptoms reportedly walked out with 3 less toes and a bottle labeled, "Do not drink, unless desperate." Instead, you retreat to the chapel garden. It's where people go when they don't know what else to do. Someone has built a pyramid of plague masks. Dozens, piled in a sad sculpture titled Faith and Filters. It does nothing, but it makes the pigeons nervous. You sit beneath a tree and stare at the sky. It's a sickly color today, like milk left out too long. You wonder if the clouds are contagious. A nun nearby is humming what might be a hymn, or possibly a drinking song. You hum along, just in case. A man stumbles past, wearing 5 cloves of garlic around his neck and absolutely nothing else. He claims to be immune. He also claims to be the Duke of Flanders. You offer him a spare onion from your pocket. He thanks you, bites it, and runs. Back at your bakery, things have not improved. The sourdough starter has gone rogue. It bubbles like it knows secrets. You glare at it. It gurgles back. Gregory the rat is asleep on a sack of barley. His tail twitches when the bells toll again. Even he's sick of it. You decide to make flatbread. No yeast. No drama. Just flour, water, and a deep belief that you probably won't die today. You press the dough with care, like it's a love letter to the future. When the first one bakes, you split it with Gregory. He seems unimpressed. You eat anyway. Outside, the sky darkens early. A storm? Or another funeral procession? Hard to tell. You light a candle and whisper a small, confused prayer. Not because you believe it will help, but because everyone else seems to be doing it, and peer pressure is eternal. You end the day as you began it, alive, confused, and mildly crusty. As you lie down, you hear the bells again. Closer this time. You count them to sleep. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. Sweet, holy silence. And then a sneeze. You open one eye. Gregory looks guilty. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. You are awakened by screaming. Not your own this time. It's the neighbor, the one with the suspicious boil on his neck that started humming Gregorian chant 2 days ago. Apparently, the boil has evolved into a full-fledged personality. They've named it Harold. You sit up in your straw-filled bedding, scratching a flea bite that might also be a spider bite, that might also be the end of you. Gregory the rat is curled on your pillow, snoring. His loyalty remains your only reliable relationship. Out the window, Two monks in wide-brimmed hoods are chasing pigeons with incense sticks. "To cleanse the air," one yells. The pigeons are less concerned with theology and more with not catching fire. Today is the day you see a doctor. Not because you're sick, although your right eye's been twitching since last Tuesday and your left foot smells faintly of pickled trout, but because someone reported you coughing. And in this city, that's a crime just slightly less serious than arson, and considerably more dangerous than stealing a bishop's wig. The guards don't knock. They simply open your door with a boot. One of them sneezes, then blames you. You're not sure whether you're being escorted to a physician or an executioner, but you pack a loaf of bread and your frog amulet anyway. The doctor lives 3 streets over and 1 sewer down. His house is easy to identify. It's the one with the giant wooden leech hanging above the door and a sign reading, "Licensed by the Guild of Humors." Beneath that, in shaky paint, "We also do teeth." Inside, it smells like rosemary, mold, and regret. The physician emerges from behind a curtain, wearing a plague mask the size of a turkey and a hat that looks like it was stolen from a wizard during a sale. "Name?" he demands. "Not Harold," you reply, already regretting the entire morning. He gestures to a stool. It collapses when you sit.
"So," he says, peering at you through goggles thick enough to refract time. "Symptoms?" You attempt a smile. "Occasional lightheadedness. Slight burning when I think about taxes. One irrational hatred of soup." He nods gravely. "Classic imbalance. Probably melancholic in origin." He consults a chart of medieval bodily fluids. There are 4: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Today you are apparently full of at least 3. "I recommend the following," he says. "Leeches, followed by warm goat urine compresses, and then a generous bleeding. If that doesn't cure you, we'll try trepanation." "Is that the one where you drill into the head?" you ask. "Not necessarily your head," he replies. "The leeches come in a jar labeled Tuesday. You suspect that's when they were last fed." He dumps a handful onto your wrist and hums softly while they latch on. You try not to scream. One of them winks at you. You are fairly certain hallucinations are not listed on the jar. Next, he produces a cloth soaked in what can only be described as regret in liquid form. "Goat urine," he explains. "Very fresh." You resist the urge to ask how he knows. He slaps it onto your forehead. Your soul leaves your body briefly. When it returns, it demands an apology. Then comes the bleeding. The doctor pulls out a blade that looks more ornamental than functional, though it's covered in enough rust to qualify as medieval seasoning. He mutters a prayer to Saint Agatha, patroness of bell ringers and uncomfortable procedures, then nicks your arm. Blood drips into a pewter bowl shaped like a duck. You try to breathe through your mouth, but it smells like every mistake you've made since birth. "Excellent color," the doctor notes. "Suggests you still have some hope left. We'll fix that." After he bandages your arm with something that feels suspiciously like old curtain, he gives you a sachet of herbs and instructs you to boil it in ale. Inhale the vapors, and then scream into a bucket until the vapors stop looking at you. You thank him and pay him with a button and the promise of a dream you once had about healing. You exit the clinic with less blood, more dizziness, and a new appreciation for soap, which unfortunately remains outlawed in 3 boroughs. On your way back, you pass a traveling apothecary selling guaranteed remedies out of a wooden cart. Items include powdered mummy, suspiciously similar to dirt, dried toad tongues, saint bones, likely chicken, and something called holy bark, which looks like it was chewed by a dog and blessed by disappointment. You buy a small vial of blue liquid labeled Savior's Syrup. The label adds, may also be paint. You drink it. Nothing changes, except your tongue turns a brilliant shade of violet. Gregory will surely be thrilled. In the square, a barber surgeon is performing a public demonstration. His patient looks uncertain. So does the barber. The tools laid out include a saw, a hammer, and a wooden spoon. You decide not to stay. You return home to find Rupert finally gone. Not dead, but relocated by monks with a cot and a vague sense of optimism. In his place, someone has left a pamphlet titled, Why This Is Definitely the End Times, and How to Profit From It. You file it under maybe later. Gregory is chasing a fly that might also be a demon. You sit on your bed, unroll the herbs, and inhale. They smell like burned time and failure. You exhale. Your arm throbs. You light a candle and whisper a prayer to the patron saint of not dying. There isn't one, but you figure if enough people whisper, maybe one will be invented out of sheer demand. Outside, the bells begin again. You listen, this time trying to count how many ring for the dying, and how many for the doctors who help them get there faster. You wonder if you feel better, or just lighter. It might be the blood loss. It might be the goat urine. It might be a newfound understanding of absurdity. Either way, you survived your first visit to a medieval doctor. Statistically, that makes you a miracle. You lie back, Gregory nuzzles into your side, and for the first time in days you almost fall asleep without flinching. Then the twitch in your right eye returns. Of course it does. You never meant to become the town crier. You were aiming for something simpler, like person who occasionally doesn't die, or unofficial loaf critic. But fate, like spoiled cheese, has a tendency to spread in unexpected directions. It starts when the old crier, Hugo the Shouter, explodes. Not metaphorically. He genuinely explodes. Right there in the square. Eyewitnesses say it began with a cough, then a sneeze, then a pop, and suddenly Hugo became an unpleasant memory in 6 directions. The priest called it divine judgment. The doctor called it rare internal fermentation. The pigeons called it lunch. You were nearby, unfortunately, looking for yeast, which now costs more than sin. The magistrate, panicked and short-staffed, pointed at you with a trembling hand and declared, You have a voice, you're hired. You did try to argue. But then a guard handed you a bell, a scroll, and a tunic that smelled like 12 previous owners had died in it. And that was that. You were the town crier, effective immediately. Your first official announcement. The Bakers' Guild is dead. Long live the price of bread. You didn't write it, but you had to shout it. Loudly. In 4 quarters of the city. Each time you shouted dead, someone screamed. Each time you shouted bread, someone asked, where? And tried to buy your shoes. Your voice cracked before midday. You tried to hand the bell back. The guard looked at you with eyes that said, I, too, have made poor life choices. Then he coughed and walked away. By sunset, you'd shouted 7 proclamations, 2 false plague alarms, and 1 wedding announcement that turned out to be a funeral with catering. Turns out, the crier does everything. Weather, shortages, burnings, royal decrees, marriage notices, death tolls, food riots. If the city sneezes, the crier is the handkerchief. And now you are the handkerchief. The scrolls pile up. The bell gets heavier. And your throat? Your throat has abandoned you. It moved out sometime between official goat curfew and all citizens to avoid breathing near the mayor. On day 3, you decide to fake laryngitis. You rehearse a rasp. You dip your face in the smokehouse. You gargle vinegar. Unfortunately, this earns you a new title, the voice of suffering. People assume you're being theatrical on purpose. A merchant gives you a coin. A child draws your likeness with glowing pustules. You become popular. This is how bad things are. People find comfort in a raspy, limping, ash-covered wreck of a crier shouting doom in a theatrical whisper. You try to hand off the scrolls to a passing monk. He bows and says, "Thy burden is divine." You ask if he wants the bell. He runs. So you carry on. One proclamation reads, "Anyone harboring rats shall be fined 1 silver piece." You leave that one unread. Gregory rides in your sleeve now. You are harboring at least 5 infractions. Another scroll. Citizens are asked to report dreams involving frogs, bleeding skies, or talking sheep. You shout that one with confidence. Half the street raises their hands. One woman claims her bread spoke Latin. You make a note to check if the bread's hiring. There is a rhythm to this job, though. You walk, ring, read, dodge tomatoes. Some days people throw coins. Some days it's teeth. One man throws a preserved fish. You take it home for Gregory. But then the new scrolls arrive. Heavier. Stranger. One says, "Citizens must not look at comets, especially the red one, especially after sunset." You ring your bell. You read it aloud. The crowd stares at the sky. One person faints. Another asks if this means stars are now considered armed. You do not have answers. You only have the scrolls. Later that week, you're handed a notice with the seal of the Archbishop. It reads, "By divine vision, it has been revealed that the plague will pass when all sins are shouted aloud in public. Begin at dawn." You blink at the page. "Do I read everyone's sins?" you ask. The guard shrugs. "Or make some up. Nobody will know." So at dawn you ring your bell and begin. Marjorie stole a chicken. Peter envied his neighbor's goat.
Thomas the cobbler harbors unclean thoughts about the fishmonger's apprentice. People gather. Some cheer. Some throw turnips. One woman confesses loudly that she once sneezed on her sister on purpose and begs forgiveness. It becomes a ritual. Morning sin shouting. Afternoon supply alerts. Evening fatality updates. You stop being a person. You become a voice with legs. You lose weight. You gain nicknames. Children follow you with bells of their own, mimicking your limp and shouting, "The end is near," with disturbing cheer. You dream in proclamations now. Even in sleep you murmur, "Plague level, orange, frogs discouraged." One night, you sit on the chapel steps, clutching your bell like it's a dying pet. A nun offers you a cup of broth. She calls you Brother Echo. You cry a little, mostly because the broth is scalding. She pats your shoulder. "It's not easy," she says, "being the voice of a dying city." You nod. Then she asks you to read the newest scroll. It says, "From this day forth, all criers must wear yellow and hop once before each announcement to confuse the spirits." You look at her. She smiles. You hop. And the city cheers. You wonder if this is madness, theater, or both. But you shout the news anyway. You hop. You twirl. You bow. They applaud. Somewhere the real Hugo the Shouter is spinning in 6 pieces. But you're still alive.
And in this city, that makes you qualified. You meet her while shouting the daily death count. It's raining, your bell has rusted shut, and you're shouting with a voice so hoarse it could audition as a haunted church organ. Your cloak is soaked, your feet are blistered, and someone just threw a cabbage at you that had clearly lived a previous life. You call out, 57 expired, 3 revived, 1 unaccounted for, last seen discussing theology with a swan. That's when you notice her. She stands beneath a rotted awning, hood half up, a fresh scar on her cheek, and an expression suggesting she's already disappointed in your entire bloodline. You know love when it strikes. The same sick jolt you feel when a loaf slips off the peel and lands in ashes. Immediate, irreversible, possibly poisonous. She says nothing, just stares. You ring the bell. It bleats like a dying goat. She raises one eyebrow. You're doing it wrong, she remarks. Wrong? You're holding the bell like it's afraid of you. Let it sing. You try a firmer grip. The bell rings better, marginally. I'm Elfrida, she continues. I trade bones. Bones? Animals, mostly. People, if no one claims them. She offers you a candied fig as casually as others pass bread. You bite. It tastes like sugar, an impending emotional turmoil. You ask what she does with the bones. Carving, she says. Amulets, buttons, dice, sometimes charms that scream a little if the moon's wrong. The honesty hooks you deeper than any plague pit. 2 days later, you spot her bargaining for a fox skull. The seller calls it divine. You point out the ear canals are clogged with candle wax. She laughs, thanks you, and walks away. You walk with her. Home is a converted stable hung with rattling vertebrae wind chimes. Her one-eyed cat glowers from a beam while Gregory stalks the shadows. She brews tea the color of guilt. You drink, surprised to be alive afterward. Why be a crier? She asks. I didn't apply. Promotion by public explosion. She nods. Occupational hazard. Soon you visit nightly. She carves vertebrae into tiny saints. You sit silent. For once grateful, your throat is too ruined for chatter. The quiet feels like a blanket. Gregory curls at your feet. The cat hisses but allows coexistence. One evening, she tells you she was married to a chimney sweep who died cleaning the inside of a forge. At least he died warm, she shrugs. You confess your goat urine compresses, sin shouting, and fear of eels. She laughs so hard, tea sprays. You nearly propose on the spot. You lean to kiss her. She stops you. Not yet. Wait till I know you're not contagious. The most romantic sentence you've ever heard. Next visit, she's feverish, just a sheen on her brow, a longer pause before jokes. You pretend not to notice. She pretends not to sweat. You bring a frog leg basil charm. If this cures me, she jokes, I'll marry you. You both laugh, nervously. The following day, she's worse, pale, shaking, smelling of camphor and denial. You spoon broth that spills from trembling hands. She quips that if she dies, you inherit a workshop full of haunted jawbones. The joke lands hollow. She asks you to stay, so you do. You sleep on the floor beside her pallet, Gregory on your chest, her cat glaring from above. She coughs, mumbles either your name or bread. You accept either. At dawn, she rasps, You're still here? I'm hard to get rid of. Like plague. Exactly. She smirks, then vomits into a bucket. You clean it without a word. That night she burns, skin glowing crimson, breath rattling like dice in a cup. You cool her with damp cloths, mutter prayers to whatever deity still answers. You whisper confessions just in case. You once ate a communion wafer you found under a pew. You told a widow her husband looked peaceful when he looked like a poached fish. You think garlic is overrated. She cracks an eye. That last one is unforgivable. You laugh and cry in the same breath. Day 5, she stands, wobbly, cursing, alive. You steady her. She says you look like death. I've been dating her, you answer. She snorts. You kiss her lightly. She kisses back, tasting of sweat, vinegar, triumph. Recovery is slow, like bread rising in a cold oven. The first day she can walk outside, the sun actually shines. You escort her through the market. People stare. You don't care. You ring the bell once. Taxes postponed due to widespread decay. And hear genuine cheers. She slips her arm through yours. Gregory rides your shoulder like a pirate mascot. Her cat follows 3 paces back, still judging. For the first time in months, the city's bells seem quieter, almost hopeful. That night you share stale bread, weak ale, and the knowledge that love, strange, bone-carving, plague-dodging love, has managed to bloom between latrines and mass graves. Against all probability, 2 beating hearts have outnumbered the dead by exactly 2. And in a season of putrefaction, that feels almost like a miracle. The morning begins with a gift. Not flowers, not bread, but a shovel still warm from another man's hands. A guard thrusts it at you and says, "Congratulations, you're on burial duty." No cake, no candles, just an iron spade and the smell of last night's rain tangled with something worse. You briefly consider pretending your arms are broken. Unfortunately, yesterday's sign shouting proclaimed that anyone discovered faking illness will be flogged with wet eels. You dislike eels. So you grip the shovel and trudge after the wagon rumbling toward the city's edge. Behind you, Elfrida waves from her workshop doorway, cat perched on her shoulder like a disapproving epaulet. She mouths, "Be careful." You nod, trying to look brave. Mostly you look damp. Outside the walls lies a field once used for spring fairs, jugglers, pies, bad poetry. Now it's a pockmarked landscape of trenches, open mouths waiting to be fed. Crows perch on the fence, smug and well-fed. A priest in muddied robes reads last rites to 20 bodies at a time, voice so hoarse he could duet with you. The foreman assigns you to trench 7. It's the shallow one. We ran out of depth. He laughs, the sound of gravel in a skillet. You do not laugh. You plant your shovel, expecting an encouraging speech, perhaps instructions. Instead, he wanders off to argue with a carpenter about coffin quotas. You stand beside the trench. Bodies arrive by cart, bundled in coarse cloth or nothing at all. Faces uncovered only long enough for someone to jot a name. There is a name left. You force your eyes to the horizon, where thunderheads stack like dirty laundry. Halfway through the morning, a familiar bell tolls from the city. You flinch, instinctively reaching for the scrolls that aren't there. Another crier covers the route today. Jealousy stings. Apparently, you've grown attached to public despair. You lift the first body. Light. Too light. Someone once said the soul weighs as much as a swallow's feather. You decide whoever said that never hefted bones after a famine. As you lay the corpse into the trench, it happens. An unnoticed fingernail snags your sleeve. Morbid farewell. Your stomach buckles. You stand still until the world stops spinning. The priest drifts over. First time. First trench, you mutter. He pats your shoulder with a hand that smells of wax and grave dust. Remember, he says, they were people last week. He offers a grim smile, as though that is comforting. You shovel earth. The dirt thuds like a drumbeat. Eventually, rhythm dulls thought. 1 body, 2, 7, then 12. At 18, your arms shake. At 21, you develop a blister shaped suspiciously like the bishop's face. You decide that is irony punishing you for earlier jokes. Around noon, a cart arrives carrying bodies and, inexplicably, a lute. The driver explains the musician died mid-song at a tavern. Thought we'd bury the instrument too. No one wants second-hand plague ballads. You withdraw the lute. Cracked, strings slack as old nerves. On impulse, you pluck one. It twangs a hopeless note. The priest glares. You apologize to God and gravity, then place the lute atop its owner. A crow applauds with a single croak. Rain begins. Thin needles at first, then sheets. Trench walls sag. Bodies bob like grim dumplings. You curse the sky in 3 languages and invent a 4th just for creativity.
The foreman shouts, faster before they float away. Best motivational slogan of the century. Mud steals your boots twice. You fetch them, swearing they can keep your dignity if they'll return the leather. By mid-afternoon, you've grown 2 inches taller in clay soles and smell like a fermented pond. Then, like a bad punchline, you remember, today is your birthday. You stop shoveling. The world wobbles. Somewhere in the fog of exhaustion you can see last year. Cake, laughter, a jug of half-decent cider, Cousin Rupert singing off-key, the baker throwing crust to Gregory. All gone. Something wrong? Asks Elfrida's cat. No, not the cat, just the priest again. You shrug. Getting older. He nods as if aging amid corpses is perfectly standard. Better than the alternative. He gestures at the trench. Fair point. A bell rings again, closer, small, tinny. You turn. Elfrida appears, cloak billowing, cat perched as ever, Gregory hiding in her pocket like a furry coin purse. She carries a pie. I baked, she calls over the rain. Well, found berries and convinced them to cooperate. She hands you the pie. Lopsided, crust burnt, smell heavenly. A single candle, really a splinter dipped in tallow, sticks out of the center. She lights it with a spark stone, shielding the flame from rain. It sputters heroically. You stare, throat thick. How did you know? You mutter in your sleep, she says, about bread and birthdays. She wipes mud from your cheek with a sleeve already ruined. Make a wish. You glance at the trench. Seems selfish. Wish small, she says. Small things survive. You close your eyes. Wish that tomorrow no one you love goes into a trench. You blow. The candle dies. The pie collapses slightly but remains pie. She slices it with a bone knife. You eat with muddy fingers. It tastes of ash and sugar and memory. Rain turns to drizzle. Crows retreat. Even the priest stops muttering. For 5 minutes burial stops and the living pretend. The foreman grumbles but accepts a crust. He calls it clerically sufficient. When the pie is gone, Elfrida pulls a small wooden whistle from her pouch, carved in the shape of a rat, Gregory's honorary medal. For luck, she says. You tuck it into your tunic near your heart. It squeaks, a real squeak. You do not question. She kisses your forehead, then leaves cloak swirling like a hopeful prophecy. Cat meows something that might be approval. Gregory waves a paw from her pocket. You return to shoveling, lighter somehow. The trench fills. Earth closes over the dead like a damp lullaby. Finally, the foreman declares the pit acceptable. He marks the mound with a plank. Here lie citizens, 1,349, rest inexpensively. You trudge back through mud into dusk. At the gate, guards spray vinegar on you for hygiene. You taste like salad, but enter the city freer of ghosts. Home, a loaf of bread, risen without you, shaping itself in the heat of the dying oven. You share it with Elfrida, Cat, Gregory, and the silence. She sets a bone-carved token on the table, 2 interlocked rats. For next year, she says. You almost smile. As night deepens, thunder rolls distantly, but no bells. You lie beside Elfrida on the floor, candle stub flickering. Rain taps the roof. Gregory snores. The cat finally sleeps without glaring. In the hush, you realize survival may be stitched from moments this small. A pie in the rain, a splinter candle, a whistle shaped like hope. Outside, trenches multiply, but so do birthdays, stubborn and quiet. You turn to Elfrida. Thank you. For what? For reminding me I'm still here. She squeezes your hand. Don't get used to it. Tomorrow we riot over flower prices. You chuckle, eyelids heavy. Can we do it after lunch? Lunch is the riot. Sleep drifts in on the smell of wet earth and pie crust. Somewhere, another bell might ring, but not yet. For one night the graves are closed, the crier is silent, and love, strange, bone-carving, plague-dodging love, outnumbers the dead by exactly 2 beating hearts. And that, in a season of putrefaction, feels almost like a miracle. The day the Flagellants march into town, you're in the square shouting about a shortage of candles and an unexpected surplus of funeral dirges. Your throat still feels like it was sanded with gravel after last week's tax riot. But the magistrate insists that news must travel faster than rats. Gregory, perched on your shoulder, squeaks in disagreement. He travels just fine. They arrive at high noon. 60 grim men and women in hooded linen, backs bare, each clutching a knotted rope, dyed rust red with someone else's yesterday. They chant in a minor key that makes pigeons drop feathers mid-flight. At the front limps a leader with eyes like burnt parchment, Brother Absalom, self-anointed herald of the final beating. A drummer beside him slaps a skin drum on the offbeat, proving rhythm is not required for apocalypse. You try to finish your announcement. There will be no garlic this week. Please adjust your recipes and your expectations. But Brother Absalom raises a skeletal finger. The crowd hushes, the drum thumps, and the Flagellants swing their ropes over their shoulders. A wet crack echoes. Someone faints. Someone else claps, unsure of the etiquette. Absalom proclaims, "We scourge ourselves that God may spare this wretched city." He gestures at you. "Join us, O voice of decay." You smile weakly. "My schedule is tied up in doom already." He doesn't laugh. Elfrida elbows through the crowd, her one-eyed cat perched on her basket like a furry gargoyle. She whispers, "Say you're busy tonight lancing boils." You nod, grateful for even unpleasant excuses. Absalom frowns, then bangs a tiny gong produced from nowhere. 4 disciples launch into the chant louder. Miserere, clack, misericordia, clack. Blood spatters cobblestones like morbid confetti. The procession snakes toward the cathedral, leaving red polka dots across the marketplace. Fishmongers cross themselves, bakers raise prices. Children imitate the whip motion until their mothers smack them with loaves. You attempt to resume crier duties, but every scroll suddenly feels trivial next to a traveling masochism choir. You ring the bell anyway. Hear ye, clack. The price of salt has, clack, tripled. No one listens except a thief who uses the distraction to relieve you of 2 copper coins. You sigh. Even pickpockets have schedules. That evening, you find Absalom's followers camping outside the cemetery, singing hymns to blistered skies. They've erected a wooden stage from stolen doors. At its center, a parchment lists tonight's itinerary. 1. Confession by shouting 2. Collective weeping 3. Whipping in 3-part harmony 4. Prophecy raffle. Admission. 1 sin or a hank of hair. You volunteer neither. Instead, you stand by a crumbling wall, observing. Elfrida arrives with a basket of bone dice. Flagellants love tokens of mortality, she explains. The cat remains home, guarding her fever talismans. Brother Absalom preaches, "The plague is wrath, our back's the altar." He beckons volunteers. The first is a blacksmith, arms like barrels, tears already streaking soot on his cheeks. He receives 5 lashes, shrieks something about stealing nails, and collapses. Crowd cheers. A monk records the score on a slate. Nails 7, sins 1. Next, a merchant confesses to watering wine, 10 lashes. A tailor admits to lusting after silk, 15. You realize the lash count is inversely proportional to entertainment value. Absalom is a consummate showman. Then he calls your name. You, crier of calamity, bring your sins to the rope. The crowd turns, you freeze. Elfrida squeezes your arm. Gregory peeks from your collar. My greatest sin, you say loudly, is poor vocal technique. Nervous laughter ripples. Absalom is not amused. Name a true sin. You consider admitting you secretly hate bagpipes. Honesty might not satisfy. Inspiration strikes. I fed bread meant for orphans to a pig. Technically true. Pig was Gregory, disguised in a tiny cloak. The crowd gasps. The slate monk licks chalk in anticipation. Absalom readies a rope. You swallow. Then Elfrida steps forward. Wait, she calls, voice like unsheathed bone. From her basket she produces a carved femur whistle. Take this offering, carved from the leg of a saintly fox. The disciples murmur, saintly foxes are rare. Absalom examines the whistle, blows, it emits an unholy squeak. He smiles, surprisingly childlike. Very well, he says, the voice may keep his hide, for now. You exhale so hard your knees buckle. Elfrida winks. Never travel without bribes, she whispers. The Flagellants resume self-flogging until moonrise, then form a circle around a barrel fire scented with blood and damp rope. They chant prophecies. The moon will bleed, frogs will preach, the sea will turn to treacle. Absalom declares the plague will end when the city builds a tower of skulls exactly 17 heads high. He sells chalk sketches of the design for 2 pennies each. They sell out. In the morning, you awaken to bells, dreadfully ordinary this time, and a new decree. All citizens must contribute clean skulls to the tower project. You ring the announcement with disbelief. People react in varied ways. Undertakers cheer. Scholars complain skull height varies by philosophy. Gamblers start pools on completion date. Elfrida shakes her head. Skull towers collapse, she mutters. Poor base to morale ratio. She suggests using goat skulls. They're plentiful and less sentimental. You suspect she's planning a side business in bovine craniums.
By noon, Flagellants parade again, carrying baskets of severed animal heads as placeholders. Brother Absalom lashes himself with lettuce, fresh rope chafes. Spectators toss coins, teeth, even a gold ring. Someone donates a painted chamber pot. Absalom pronounces it symbolic and crowns himself with it. Ridicule grows as quickly as zeal. A group of actors copies the procession, smacking each other with sausages. The crowd laughs, pelts them with beans. Absalom denounces the mockers. Fools invite pestilence. He orders a purifying vigil at dusk. No food, no drink, only pain and prophecy. Elfrida persuades you to attend undercover. She supplies you with a hooded robe smelling of clove oil and goat tallow.
plus a spine-shaped spoon for authenticity. Gregory hides inside your sleeve, tail twitching. The vigil begins with barefoot laps around the cemetery. After the third lap, you're bleeding through cheap sandals. After the fifth, you're hallucinating a debating pigeon. Absalom leads a chant predicting that by dawn, the river will run black. The drummer misses a beat. Absalom flogs him with the drum. At midnight, participants line up to reveal personal visions. Most involve flames. One farmer claims he saw the plague riding a pig. Another swears the moon winked at him. You improvise. I beheld a rat with wings of parchment reciting every sin I've ever read aloud. The crowd gasps. Absalom nods sagely. Gregory squeaks on cue. Finally, they unveil the prophecy raffle, a sack of lots carved from shin bones. Draw the winning bone, and you're the chosen scourge, destined to whip the mayor at sunrise to cleanse corruption. You draw a bone shaped suspiciously like a turnip. Absalom proclaims, "The chosen." The crowd cheers. Elfrida mouths, "What now?" You spend the rest of the night rehearsing your mayor scourging stunts, which feels like bad dance practice. Elfrida sneaks you wine for courage and a jar of ash for dramatic flair. At dawn, the Flagellants march towards City Hall. You lead, bare-backed, chalked in ash, clutching a rope that still smells of lettuce. The mayor, bloated, violet-robed, hungover, stumbles onto the balcony. He planned an address about rising bread taxes. Instead, he's greeted by a chanting mob. He gapes as Absalom declares, "Behold the chosen scourge." You wonder if fleeing is still an option. You lift the rope. The mayor squeaks something about diplomatic immunity. You swing once, lightly tapping his velvet sleeve. The crowd roars. The mayor collapses in shock, not pain. Someone tosses onions. You drop the rope, raise your hands and yell, "The corruption is cleansed." For one glorious minute, the city erupts in applause. Then a hail of guards pours from the gatehouse. Flagellants scatter like startled geese. Absalom tries to rally them. Pain is our shield, and is promptly arrested. The drummer vaults a cart, fleeing. The slate monk faints onto his chalkboard. Sins, too many. You and Elfrida duck behind a statue, Gregory clinging like a furry brooch. She laughs breathlessly. Well, that prophecy failed. Another scroll arrives by messenger before noon. The Flagellants are banished, Skull Tower cancelled. Citizens reminded to remain calm and buy extra salt. You ring the decree while bandaging your blistered feet. People groan, relieved or disappointed. Entrepreneurs discount torches and rope. Brother Absalom is paraded out the gate in chains, still shouting about 17 skulls. Someone hands him a cabbage. He blesses it with bloodied fingers. Later, at Elfrida's workshop, you soak your feet in rosemary brine. She carves a tiny whip from a sparrow femur. "Souvenir," she says, hanging it by the door beside bone saints and dice. The cat bats it once, unimpressed. You sip weak ale, recounting every absurd detail. She grins, eyes bright. "You were magnificent," she teases. "A real scourge of authority. I barely grazed him. Symbolism outweighs force." Gregory agrees, gnawing the whistle Absalom loved. Outside, bells toll the ordinary litany. Deaths, bread rations, curfew. Inside, laughter echoing off ribcage wind chimes sounds dangerously like hope. You realize failed prophecies might be gifts, proof the future isn't shackled to the loudest drum. Tomorrow will bring new fools, new doom, but tonight you share bone-die stories, cat snores, and the blessed absence of ropes. And somewhere along the plague-soaked timeline, that feels almost like salvation. You wake to the sound of bread screaming. Not people screaming for bread, actual bread. Loaves outside the bakery sobbing and pleading in squeaky little voices. Don't eat me, I'm mostly sawdust. For one dazzled heartbeat you assume madness finally claimed you. Then the clang of an empty pot snaps everything into focus. Famine riots have begun, and the city streets are arguing in very human pitches about who deserves the last lump of dough. You scramble into yesterday's tunic, still wet from rain, blood, and vinegar, and grab the crier's bell out of habit. Gregory the rat scurries up your sleeve. Elfrida's cat watches from the rafters, eyes gleaming as if he penned the entire disaster and is now waiting for reviews. Outside, chaos stages its dress rehearsal. Bakers barricade their doorways with peel poles. Gate guards shout contradictory orders. Stay inside. Form orderly queues. Run for your lives. Children lob carrot tops like grenades. Masked beggars chant, flour or power, and rattle wooden spoons against shields. A goat in a makeshift crown chews the city banner, unchallenged. You attempt your duty, ring the bell, announce something official, calm the crowd. Your voice emerges as a burp of gravel. Citizens, by decree of... A cabbage sails past. You duck. A dusting of weevil-rich flour coats your hair. No one listens to proclamations when their stomach grammar screams louder than civic punctuation. Elfrida appears, clutching a sack of bone dice and a look of pure exasperation. They're starting early, she says. I thought uprisings waited until noon. They must be skipping breakfast, you croak. A crash reverberates. The grain granary, last intact one, has been breached. Wheat explodes like golden fireworks, and townsfolk swarm. Somewhere in that living tide, glimpse Brother Absalom's ex-drummer banging on an empty bucket for hopeful rhythm. Rebellion always needs percussion. By midday, 3 factions crystallize. 1. The crust loyalists, bakers, millers, and nervous burghers who still believe in price lists. 2. The flowerless majority, everyone else, armed with sticks and existential dread. 3. The Rat King's court, an unsettling alliance of alley thieves, street urchins, and actual rats led, rumor says, by a massive knot of rodents with conjoined tails who whispers strategy through sewer grates. You hope that last group is metaphor. Gregory's twitchy whiskers say otherwise. The mayor hides in the clock tower, issuing leaflets that drift down like bland snowflakes. Remain calm. The situation is well in hand. A starving cobbler uses 1 leaflet as toilet paper mid-street. Message received. As crier, you're expected to mediate. You instead find Elfrida and propose evacuation. She declines. Somebody has to keep the bones from looters. Besides, revolutions always need stenographers. She thrusts a chalkboard at you. Write history while it's hot. Afternoon heat settles, thick as gruel. Rioters drag flour sacks toward the square. Loyalists form barricades with oven doors. A monk waves a cross and begs for temperance. A child pelts him with yeast cakes that never rose. Your bell rings feebly. Your scrolls remain unread in a pouch because new decrees arrive faster than you can shout the old ones. Then a hush ripples through the mob, unnatural, like a page torn from silence itself. Out of the sewer grate beneath the statue of St. Eustace pour dozens, no, hundreds of rats, grey, black, piebald, their eyes shining like ruby cinders. At their center slithers a horror knot, 6 rodents fused by tails, throned on a broken chamber pot pushed by lesser rats. The Rat King has arrived. People freeze. Bread thieves drop loaves. Bakers drop jaws. Even the goat stops chewing. The Rat King squeaks once. Gregory answers from your shoulder with an almost reverent chirp. You begin questioning your life choices. A gaunt thief, emboldened, steps forward. What do you want, vermin? The rat knot tilts. One head emits a rattling hiss. Instantly, 200 rats surge, scramble up the thief's legs, strip his pockets of crumbs, and scatter. The thief backs off, screaming, minus dignity and snacks. Message delivered. The Rat King wants everything. Panic reignites. Loyalists retreat toward the cathedral, dragging carts of rye. Flowerless crowds surge after them, only to be flanked by rodents who nibble bootlaces, topple sacks, and sow confusion. Somewhere in the swirl, you spot the drumming rebel banging in frantic 5/4 time. A rhythm even fear can't follow. You decide to parlay. Someone has to. You raise your bell, clang, clang, and miraculously the noise cuts the din. Citizens, you rasp, we are being out-strategized by rodents. Laughter bubbles, desperate, real.
From atop their chamber pot chariot, the Rat King cleans whiskers, seemingly amused. A baker yells, "Got a better idea, crier?" "Yes," you lie. "A feast so big not even rats can finish it. Share the grain, stop the swarm." Murmurs. Hunger waltzes with doubt. Meanwhile, Elfrida slips away, returns hefting a massive drum of rendered goose fat used for lamp oil. "Rats hate rancid grease," she whispers. "Coat the streets, corral them." Clever, but you need buy-in.
You climb a broken cart, address both humans and rodents. A proposal: we open the granary, form queues. Every soul gets flour for 1 loaf. In return, Rat King withdraws his army to the sewers and accepts our tithe of weekly scraps. Brother Absalom's drummer paws his rhythm. The Rat King chitters among advisors. Gregory scrambles down and, to your horror, joins the Congress beneath the cart, squeaks volley like diplomatic telegrams. After tense minutes, Gregory returns, nips your ear. Agreement. You declare the truce. Loyalists unlock granary doors. Flowerless majority forms haphazard lines. Rats retreat to gutter edges, watching. The grease drum is emptied in a ring around the granary walls. Insurance. Even the goat assists by headbutting queue jumpers. Distribution begins. Scoops of grain switch hands. Tension loosens. Children laugh in disbelief at the white dust coating their noses. The mayor, seeing order he did not create, descends the clock tower to claim credit. Bad timing. A rogue rat darts up his robe. He shrieks, runs, and is last seen vaulting a turnip cart into a midden pit. Democratic applause ensues. Twilight falls purple-gray. Bread ovens relight across the city. For a few hours, streets smell of hope rising. You and Elfrida sit on her workshop step, sharing a flat loaf and weak ale. Gregory licks flour off whiskers. The cat, grudgingly impressed, allows both of you to live, but night breeds whispers. Some claim the Rat King demanded too steep a toll. Others mutter that giving grain away encourages sloth. The loyalists fear ruin. The majority fears betrayal. Thieves fear boredom. Unease simmers. At midnight a scream tears the calm. A flour merchant, one who hoarded sacks under floorboards, lies dead, throat shredded. Rat bites, people say. Others say knives. The rumor wheel spins faster than facts. You reconvene an emergency moot in the square, lanterns guttering. Factions gather, faces pale with moonlit suspicion. Brother Absalom's drummer bangs a heartbeat. Elfrida joins, armed with a bone-handled cleaver. "If this turns violent," she mutters, "aim for knees." From the shadows emerges a cloaked figure, small, hunched. She reveals herself, Sister Ethelreda, the abbess known for distributing free porridge. Her grain stores were robbed earlier, she says, by masked men wearing rat tails. A setup, someone framing the rodents. Arguments flare. Loyalists blame thieves. Thieves blame Rat King. Zealots blame sin. You ring your bell until the clapper cracks. Silence. We saw cooperation feed children today, you shout. Will we trade that for another grave trench? Elfrida raises the cleaver, not threatening but as torchlight reflector. We find the imposters. Tonight. A search party forms, an uneasy mix of bakers, pickpockets, and one apologetic monk. You volunteer, Gregory Scout perched. Sister Ethelreda blesses you, which feels nice until you remember her last blessing preceded a lightning strike on the tavern. Trail begins at the robbed storeroom. Broken lock, rat tails of yarn on the floor. Too clean, too staged. Gregory sniffs, circles, darts into an alley. You follow into dank corridors of the spice district, where sacks of cloves rot unsold because plague tongues crave blandness. A rotten door creaks open. Inside, barrels of stolen grain, looted church silver, and a dozen men wearing stitched rat masks, half-drunken thieves, half-disgruntled millers. Their leader, the flour merchant, found dead, alive and smug. Fake corpse, real plot. They planned to incite a second riot, seize power as saviors once supplies vanished again. Surprise inspection. You, Elfrida, 3 bakers with rolling pins, and Gregory. What's poor? You swallow, announce. By order of... Oh, who cares? You're under arrest. Leader laughs, brandishes a dagger. You in what army? Q skittering. Actual rats pour from cracks, summoned by Gregory's frantic squeak symphony. The thieves pale. Battle is brief. Ridiculous. Rolling pins versus daggers, rats versus ankles, Elfrida's cleaver versus barrel staves. You duck a swing. Ring your cracked bell into a thief's temple. He collapses, more from shock than force. Rats chew sash knots, disarming rogues. Leader lunges for Elfrida. The cat appears, eye blazing, rakes his face. He screams, drops dagger, flees, straight into a spice barrel that tips, entombing him in cloves. Just desserts. By dawn, conspirators are tied, with slightly nibbled rope, in the square. Citizens awake to see thieves unmasked. Harmony restored not by princes, but pests. The Rat King emerges for the victory parade. He inclines a furry head toward you. A benediction? A claim? Hard to tell. Gregory returns, chest puffed. A new accord is inked. The city grants sewers to the Rat King in perpetuity, plus weekly scraps. In return, rodents patrol for grain thieves. The mayor's leaflet declares it his initiative. No one bothers correcting him. He still smells like turnip pit. Elfrida carves tiny wooden plaques reading ratified, sells them as souvenirs. They outsell plague charms 3-1. That night, bread lines shorten, ovens glow, and the bells ring only for vespers. You sit atop the city wall with Elfrida, sharing crusts. Stars prick the velvet sky. For once they seem indifferent, not ominous. You say, "We negotiated with rats today." She nods. Better diplomats than monks. Gregory curls between you, squeaking lullabies. Even the cat dozes, tail twitching dreams of clawed glory. Below, the streets calm. Above, moonlight bathes the rooftop silver. Somewhere a drummer taps a gentle rhythm, hope's tentative heartbeat. The rebellion ended not in fire but in compromise, and a peculiar monarchy beneath the cobblestones. Perhaps fellowship is possible among desperate creatures, furless or furred. And perhaps tomorrow's bread will rise without screams. You close your eyes, breathe in yeast-tinged air, and allow yourself a rare, reckless thought. Survival might yet become living. Winter limps into the city like a wounded beggar, half-frozen rain clinging to gutters, smoke from scrapwood fires curling through every cracked gable. The bells toll less often now, clappers rusted, priests exhausted, but the silence isn't peace. It's merely plague catching its breath before another round. You have, against reasonable odds, outlived 2 mayors, 4 doctors, 1 false prophet, and a baker's guild that now exists only as a cautionary folk song. Unfortunately, staying alive has turned from a thrilling rebellion into a tedious career. The city council, currently 3 merchants and a goose that wandered into the chamber during quorum, decrees new, essential professions. Criers remain on the list, as do grave diggers, rat mediators, and handlers of questionable fluids. You qualify for all 4. Payment is theoretically in coin, practically in turnips, often in promises signed with an X that looks suspiciously like a chicken's footprint. Gregory accepts promises. He finds the parchment tasty, so you keep working. Mornings begin before dawn. You stumble from Elfrida's workshop, bell in one hand, shovel over your shoulder, and a wooden bucket dangling from your belt for whatever fluids the day requires. Elfrida sleeps a little longer, burning midnight oil to carve bone charms that now feature the Rat King's likeness. Tourists adore them, though no tourists dare visit. Her cat, newly fat on stolen sausages, guards the stock. You ring the bell exactly twice, 1 clang for news, 1 for mercy, then read any scroll shoved through the door overnight. They range from sensible, bridge closed, trolls suspected, to hysterical, moon-spotted bleeding, avoid moon. People listen with the dull acceptance of oxen hitched to the same cart too long. They toss you stale bread ends, a pickled carrot, sometimes a wink. Hungry but resigned, they shuffle on. After proclamations, you trudge to the eastern fields, now the city's unofficial necropolis, to relieve the night crew. The foreman greets you with a grunt, 3 blisters, and a ledger of the newly departed. He never uses ink. Instead, he bites his finger to draw a bloody tally. You're on first-name terms with every type of dirt. Loam that swallows boots, clay that clings like need, sand so dry it sings against the shovel. You dig because someone must, because each mound keeps pestilence 1 inch farther from the streets, and because the quiet down here is honest. Gregory helps by scouting empty holes for residual grain. You sometimes imagine building him a tiny medal, rat most likely to save civilization. But forging metals costs more than bread, so you settle for pats on the fur and smuggled crumbs. Around midday you barter. The market, once chaotic, now operates on a fragile choreography of need. You trade a roll of parchment, pilfered from the council's goose, who no longer requires minutes, for eggs so small you wonder if birds are downsizing. In return for 2 bone dice, a tinsmith repairs your bell clapper with wire scavenged off a fallen chandelier. Most coveted currency, though, is information. You carry plenty. Whose fever broke, whose didn't. Where the Rat King diverted a swarm after a butcher tried to poison them. Which alley currently houses the traveling barber who sanitizes blades in burning rosemary. Knowledge fetches hot broth faster than silver. Afternoons you switch roles. Mediator. Some disputes are simple. Cats accused of eating rat allies. Bakers claiming other bakers' sourdough mothers as their own. Others border on allegorical. Today, A philosophical duel erupts between two Flagellants who returned in secret after banishment. One insists pain redeems, the other that redemption is pain.
They demand you judge. You choose a compromise. Each will flog a sack of potatoes instead of themselves. The potatoes suffer nobly. The Flagellants feel purpose. The city gains mashed dinner. Peace, by your definition, is everyone walking away equally bewildered but breathing. Elfrida joins you before dusk, cheeks wind-chafed, smelling of beeswax and sawdust. She updates you on commerce, bone charms selling briskly, though someone counterfeits them with carved turnips. She proposes forming a guild, Order of the Practical Macabre. Fees include a smile and not being dead. You suggest adding a handshake once plague passes. Twilight is for graves again, this time re-inspecting older mounds. Frost heaves soil, exposing fragments, buttons a child's wooden horse, teeth that never finish their prayers. You rebury each offering with whispered apologies. You've learned the ground is a gossip. Treat it gently and it swallows secrets. Tonight, as icy fog curls off the river, a runner arrives with panic stitched into every step. The council goose has been stolen, kidnapped, feather and all. In its place, a ransom note. Deliver 1 cart of grain to the old clock tower, or the beast is soup. Signed with an inky paw print. Panic threatens governance. Without a goose, no quorum. Without quorum, no decrees. Without decrees, no illusions of order. The merchants convene an emergency council anyway. 3 men and a borrowed rooster that keeps time worse than the broken clocks. They draft a decree blaming the Rat King. You doubt it. Rodent royalty prefers wheat to fowl. Elfrida suspects rival bone carvers. You propose a diplomatic retrieval instead of a raid. Fewer pitchforks, more listening. Under oil-smudged torches, you, Elfrida, and Gregory follow a trail of downy feathers through snaking alleys to an abandoned tannery. Inside, you find not rats but children, orphans turned scavengers, sheltering the goose like a pet. They explain between sniffles that they needed a loud friend to scare off night spirits. The ransom note was a bluff. They crave grain more than soup. Elfrida's eyes soften. You clear your throat, offer negotiation. The city provides daily porridge. The children return the goose and join the grave's crew. Light duty, daylight only, paid in bread. They agree, on condition the goose visits weekly. Contract sealed with crumbs and pinky swears. You carry the goose home at dawn. The merchants praise your heroism, revise their decree from rat treason to goose misplacement, and promise increased orphan rations once they find grain. You volunteer to shout this good news knowing full well it may rot before reality sets. Days slide into a cracked leather routine. Dig, ring, bargain, mediate, dig again. Survival becomes a ledger of tiny credits. 1 warm fire, 2 extra onions, half an hour laughing with Elfrida over the rooster's attempts at diplomacy. Small profits in a bankrupt era. Yet one evening, the ledger threatens red. Elfrida doesn't greet you at the workshop. Instead, her cat paces, yowling. On her workbench lies a snapped bone knife and a scrap of parchment. Urgent toothache. Gone to itinerant barber by riverside. Odd. She dislikes strangers touching her mouth. You grab your cloak, bell, and bucket, just in case questionable fluids are needed, and sprint. The riverside stalls glow by torchlight, buzzing aftermarket. You spot the traveling barber's tent. Striped canvas, sign promising painless extractions and occasional haircut. Inside, Elfrida sits rigid, cheeks flushed, barber poking a metal spike toward her molar. His hands shake. A hungry crowd gathers. He's already pulled 4 teeth tonight with more screams than success. You ring the bell once, clang slice of authority, and declare the barber unfit until he sterilizes tools. He scoffs, brandishing pliers. Gregory launches from your hood, lands on the tool, and bites. The barber shrieks louder than previous patients, dropping instruments. Elfrida spits gauze, stands, still hurting but intact. In the chaos, a ragged woman collapses. Blood gushes from her side, knife wound, likely breadline scuffle. Your bucket finds purpose. You kneel, pack the gash with rags soaked in vinegar borrowed from a pickler's stall. You bark orders, clean cloth, pressure, heat. The barber retches. Elfrida, teeth forgotten, stitches with catgut kept for carving projects. Within minutes, the bleeding slows. The crowd hushes anew, shock at seeing care without coin. Word spreads by sunrise. The crier and the bone carver healed a stranger. People line outside the workshop. Boils, fevers, nightmares. You aren't doctors, but you own thread, vinegar, and a conviction that absence of leeches is already an improvement. Healing becomes another full-time job. You ration herbs, improvise splints from chair legs, brew onion honey cough syrup that tastes like betrayal but works. Payments arrive as firewood, goat cheese, once even a bolt of linen embroidered with hearts. Elfrida turns the cloth into bandages. Love literally saves skin. One snowy night, the Rat King himself, chamber pot throne carried by 6 lieutenants, appears in your doorway. Gregory bows. The rat monarch squeaks a mournful tune, then reveals a tiny paw with a thorn wedged deep. Elfrida coaxes it free with tweezers. You dab the wound with rosemary oil. In gratitude, the Rat King gifts a porcelain bead, likely stolen, and a promise. His hordes will guard the workshop from thieves. You believe him. No burglar wants whiskered retaliation. Spring edges closer. Sunlight lengthens, revealing how tattered the city truly is. Walls pockmarked, roofs sagging, streets cross-hatched with makeshift graves. Yet fewer bells ring for death. Bread lines shorten. Children play tag around tombstones you dug, laughter mixing with wind like new masonry between old cracks. Council meetings resume, Goose presiding, merchants quibbling about trade routes reopening. They ask your opinion on rebuilding the harbor. You suggest first mending the bridge so fishermen don't fall through. They scribble notes, as if practicality were novel. Your birthday returns, marked by a single loaf Elfrida bakes with actual raisins. She hides a bone whistle shaped like a heart inside. You nearly choke, then laugh for a full minute. The city choir, 5 drunk masons and a cat, serenades from the alley while Gregory leads rat percussion on garbage tins. You drink watered wine, toast absent friends, toast present miracles, toast the silly endurance of flesh. After the feast, you climb the cathedral scaffold, unfinished since plague paused construction. From that height, the city looks like a cracked plate repaired with threads of gold, scars visible, beauty undeniable. Lanterns flicker through fog, marking houses where survivors tell new stories. Across rooftops, you glimpse the Rat King's silhouette, tail knot tight, watching his domain of gutters and renewed life. You breathe the night air, no longer thick with rot, but with wood smoke and baking rye. Survival, you realize, is not a state. It's a craft, hammered daily on anvils of hunger, fear, and stubborn kindness. You ring your bell one soft time, not for news, not for doom, but as an exhale of gratitude that someone might hear and think, tomorrow, perhaps, is still worth ringing for. Below, Elfrida waves, cleaver dangling casually,
cat draped around her neck like a living scarf. You descend, feet steady despite missing rungs, and join her in the street that once reeked of corpses but now smells faintly of lavender and a future baking slower than bread yet stubbornly rising. And that, you suppose, is a full day's work. Summer returns as timidly as a stray cat, padding through the alleys one hesitant sunbeam at a time. It has been 2 full turns of the moon since the last bell tolled purely for plague. And though nobody trusts the silence, everyone tastes it like stolen honey. You awake in half-light to an unfamiliar sound, birdsong uninterrupted by coughing. Gregory the rat sits on the windowsill, whiskers twitching in disbelief, as if he too suspects a trap set by destiny. Elfrida is already up, oiling wood for a new sign above the door. She has chosen a name for your accidental clinic, the sinew and sine qua non. You object that nobody can pronounce it. She claims that mystery adds value. Her cat, newly majestic after a winter on contraband sausages, bats at the swinging sign until the letters clack like bones. Your own morning ritual begins with the bell. It no longer feels like a weapon. Its rust has been scrubbed, its handle wrapped in fine linen paid for by grateful patience and the council's overdue gratitude. You ring it once, clear, bright, solely to announce that today, for the first time in a year and a grief-ridden forever, there is no emergency. Citizens emerge just to hear the echo. The mayor, yes, another one, approaches in a robe that tries very hard to look silk. He thanks you for steadfast service in a turbulent era and proposes a statue in your honor, modest, perhaps near the market latrine. You request grain instead. He nods, relieved, scribbles a parchment promising 3 sacks of barley, guaranteed free of weevils. You pretend to believe him. He pretends his word is good. Mid-morning, you and Elfrida escort a small procession toward the river. Sister Ethelreda, now guardian of the orphan squad, leads 12 children carrying baskets of breadcrumbs. Today marks the reopening of the old bridge, repaired with planks carved from the doors of houses too haunted to re-inhabit. At the bridge's midpoint stands a dais draped in banners depicting, of all things, the Rat King entwined with the city crest, half jest, half treaty. The children scatter crumbs into the water. Sleek river fish rise like memories that refuse to drown.
A trumpet squeals off-key. The council goose, re-elected mascot by acclamation, waddles forward with an inked quill tied to its wing. The mayor reads a proclamation naming this Day of Thaw, officially declaring the plague's grip broken, trade routes reopened, and past feuds frozen for study at a later, less hungry date. Crowd cheers, uncertain but willing. Behind the dais lurks Brother Absalom's drummer, free after 9 months of penance hammering stone into gravel. He taps a steady rhythm now, hope in simple 4/4. Once, mocking flagellants stand among bakers, sharing bread instead of lashes. You notice the smell, real yeast, warm crust, a scent so brave it makes your eyes sting. Elfrida squeezes your hand. "We should celebrate," she whispers. "Isn't this celebration?" You reply. "Properly," she insists, eyes shining with schemed mischief. "A feast big enough to hush the ghosts." Preparations ignite faster than gossip. The Rat King's envoy, 3 well-groomed rats wearing thimble helmets, deliver word that sewer pantries overflow with pilfered grain, ready to donate. Fishermen haul nets not used since the first quarantine. The butcher's widow offers goat carcasses, claiming the animals died peacefully in their sleep. Though judging by hoof marks on her apron, Peace required persuasion. Throughout the afternoon, the market square transforms. Tables, mismatched and wobbly, sprawl beneath bunting stitched from torn plague flags. A barrel organ creaks back to work, grinding out half-remembered madrigals. People bring whatever they can, onions, turnips shaped like philosophers, a single exotic lemon guarded like a relic. No coins change hands. Instead, there is barter of stories. Who survived, who almost didn't, and which miracle seems most absurd in hindsight. You and Elfrida oversee the communal ovens. She mixes dough with a fervor usually reserved for exorcism, carving small rat shapes into each loaf, tribute, insurance, inside joke. You stoke the fire, add aromatic herbs the apothecary swore would ward off lingering miasma. The smell summons lines longer than confession day. Near sunset, a hush ripples. From the alley emerges the Rat King, chamber pot throne freshly polished, borne by lieutenants wearing ribbons. Gregory scampers ahead, chittering an introduction. The crowd parts respectfully, fear long since melted into curious acceptance. The mayor bows too low and nearly headbutts his own knees. A platter of cheese rinds is presented. The Rat King tastes, squeaks approval, and the feast officially begins. Plates clatter, children shriek, fiddles saw, and for the first time the city resembles a place meant for living instead of not dying. You carry a tray of steaming loaves past tables where rival guilds toast each other with watered wine. Brother Absalom, released but still certain the world teeters on sin, raises a mug and admits flogging potatoes was surprisingly cathartic. Everyone laughs, even him. Night unfurls like velvet, lit by lantern constellations. Elfrida climbs a barrel, taps her bone whistle, and calls for attention. Voice strong, she proposes an annual remembrance, not of plague, but of perseverance. A holiday where citizens share a meal with strangers, rats included. Bells ring once for peace, and no decrees are shouted unless they announce dessert. The proposal wins by roar and clanging mugs. You step up beside her, intending to offer thanks, but words tangle behind the lump in your throat. Instead, you raise the crier's bell. One clear note arcs into the star-salted sky. People fall silent, heads tilted. In that pause lives every trench you dug, every scroll you read, every candle burned in terror. The note fades. The silence resets the heartbeat of the city. Applause erupts. Hands, paws, wings. Elfrida kisses you, soft and sure. Somewhere, her cat emits the single approving purr you have waited months to hear. Later, when torches gutter low and revelers drift home, you and she wander the quiet streets. Snowmelt trickles in gutters. The air smells of damp earth ready to grow things again. You reach the cemetery hill, where grave mounds blur into gentle humps beneath wildflowers you planted after frost receded. Fireflies flicker among headstones like souls practicing light. You sit on a flat slab, no name. The slate monk forgot his chalk that day, and share the last heel of celebratory bread. Gregory sniffs blossoms. The cat stalks shadows for imaginary dangers. Elfrida leans against you. Think we'll ever leave this place? She asks. Probably not, you answer. Leaving would mean teaching another city how to negotiate with rats. She laughs, then grows quiet. Do you ever count the ones we lost? You look at your hands, scarred from shovels, ink, and makeshift surgeries. Every night, you say, but I also count the ones we found. She twines her fingers through yours. Then keep counting. I like your math. Wind nudges the bell at your hip. It answers with a soft peal no louder than a lullaby. Down in the sewers, you imagine the Rat King hears it and turns over on his porcelain throne content that surface dwellers still honor the pact. Up above, dawn tiptoes early, painting the horizon with colors you'd forgotten existed. Rose, amber, pale green of new wheat. You realize tomorrow's proclamations may finally include something mundane. Ship arrivals, song contests, a notice about stray geese rather than stray corpses. The thought tastes sweeter than raisin bread. You stand, stretch aching limbs that nevertheless feel lighter. Elfrida kisses the pulse at your wrist. Time for bed, she says, before someone invents a new catastrophe. On the walk home, you pass the wall where last year someone scrawled, "The end is nigh." Another hand painted over it. The end was nigh. We were nigher. Beneath, a child has added in crooked chalk, "Now we're baking pies." You step inside the workshop, the sign creaks overhead, letters flashing in torchlight. The sinew and sine qua non, still unpronounceable, already beloved. On the shelf waits tomorrow's dough, quietly rising. Beside it rests a fresh scroll. You unroll it, expecting another ordinance. Instead, it's blank, save for a single line in elegant ink. Write us forward. You set the scroll on the table, dip a quill, and as the first blue thread of sunrise slips through the shutters, you begin. Citizens of the city formerly known for plague. Let it be recorded that on this day we chose life louder than bells, bread warmer than fear, and love stranger than prophecy. We are still here, and that is enough for history to chew on.